It is now Good Friday of Holy Week. Good Friday is accounted for in Mark 15. So prior to this, Jesus was arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane because of Jesus' betrayal. He was taken and falsely accused and said absolutely nothing except for that he is the Messiah. In the early hours of Good Friday, Judas was so overcome with grief that he hanged himself. Now we're at the place where Jesus, who's already been falsely accused, is in front of Pilate. Pilate asks, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he said, "You say I am." So then he's being accused of so many things again, and Pilate's like, "Are you going to answer?" And Jesus says nothing, and he's kind of shocked, but he says nothing. Because this was a festival, it was common practice to release one prisoner back to the people. So on the one side, they have Jesus, and then on the other side, they bring out Barabbas, who was a terrible person and had committed murder, and they tell them to free Barabbas and to crucify Jesus. Pilate asked the people, what crimes did he commit, and they just continued to yell, "Crucify." He wanted to please his people, so he released Barabbas to them, had Jesus flogged, and then taken to crucifixion. On the way to the crucifixion, Jesus was made a mockery of and tortured. He was flogged and beaten, and then they put a crown of thorns on his head. They made him carry his own cross. They made fun of him for being the king. Ultimate torture until they get to the place called Golgotha, which is known as the place of the skull. There they are going to crucify him in a spot where they have King of the Jews written. He's being crucified with two other people, and as they are getting ready, they're yelling and mocking him too. It was 9 a.m. when they started the crucifixion, and it says at noon a darkness came over the land. It was also important to mention that they did offer him wine and myrrh, but he chose not to take it. Crucifixion was a very torturous, long, drawn-out process, and just really miserable. It says that at 3 p.m, which is where the darkness ends, Jesus calls out, I'm not going to even pronounce that, you can go read it. It seems so beautiful in the original language, but it says, my God, why have you forsaken me?" People thought he was calling to Elijah and that Elijah was going to save him, but then he took his last breath with a loud cry. It was in that moment that the curtain of the temple was ripped in half, which is kind of why it's called Good Friday, because this was the sacrifice. The centurion looked at him and he was like, I think this was the man of God. Now their Sabbath was going to take place by 6 p.m. sundown on a Friday, and so Jesus was already passed away about 3 p.m. in the afternoon. In Mark, it talks about a man named Joseph who went to Pilate and boldly asked for Jesus' body so that he can prepare it for burial. Pilate was shocked he was passed away already, and so the centurion was like, yep, no, he is passed away. So Pilate grants Joseph the body of Jesus. There he goes and lays it in the tomb, and some of the women who had watched his crucifixion has now seen where his grave was. And then they are going to go into the Sabbath.